EQ and compression are, more often than not, the first two things that we reach for in a mix. They go hand in hand to help us blend our tracks together, but if we insert them back to back, does it matter which order we put them in? Should we even care? Now in this video, we're going to explore this highly controversial topic by looking at the main differences between putting EQ before compression and after. Now, I'm going to assume that you already know some of the basics behind EQ and compression. If not, check out the articles in the description below. So, EQ into compression versus compression into EQ. Some of you swear blind that EQ should be after the compressor, and others say before. So which is it? Now, to get to the bottom of this, we need to understand the origins of this debate, which we can trace back to the analog days. Old school consoles didn't typically give us any say in this matter. We had a mic pre, into an EQ, into compression. Done. Now, the only reason why we're having this conversation now is because of plugins and the fact that we can order them in any way we want. So we could end this argument now and say EQ first, then compress, because that's the console way of doing things. But these days, the vast majority of us aren't working on consoles. We mix in the box. So let's explore some pros and cons of both ways of chaining EQ and compression. Starting with EQ before compression. One benefit of working this way is that you can use the EQ to correct problem frequencies, such as boomy proximity effects and muddy tones, before getting down and dirty with compression. But cleaning a track is only one way that we can use EQ. We can also use EQ for adding colour and vibe, and we're likely to keep adjusting our EQ several times throughout a mix. With compression, this tends to be more of a set it and forget it kind of thing. So if you keep making changes to your pre-EQ in pursuit of the perfect tone, you'll more than likely need to keep adjusting the threshold in the compressor that follows it. Why is this? Let's say you've dialed in some corrective EQ and some compression that squeeze the dynamics on your track just right. Now you want to add some extra low end. Any level change at the EQ, which occurs when you boost or cut, will change the character and behaviour of your compression. This difference may be slight or dramatic. Either way, the compressor's going to react to whatever level you throw at it from the EQ. In this case, if you drive more level out of an EQ, your compressor's going to work a lot harder and could sound more pumpy. To counter this, you'll end up playing a bit of cat and mouse between the EQ and the compressor's threshold. So for a smooth workflow that saves you needing to rework your compressor threshold, it's best to set your EQ tastefully to begin with. But driving an extra bit of signal into your compressor could work in your favour. Small amounts can be an effective way of adding sheen to an analog style compressor, such as the Puigchild 670, while a huge dollop of top end can be great for getting some extra excitement and presence out of a compressor. Let's flip this around now and look at putting EQ after compression. Starting with a positive. With this, you can easily shape EQ without needing to worry about the compressor being influenced. But, and here's the negative, if there are some tonal issues in the recording, such as low-end thumps, these could easily trigger the compressor in ways that you don't want. Filtering out these issues with post-EQ won't save your compressor from hearing and reacting to those issues. Now, this particular chain is a really good starting point for mix bus and master applications, where surgical cuts aren't really needed, and a lot of my outboard gear is wired this way with my Moo compressor into my passive EQ, and I've got a few mix templates set up like this as well. So if you need a small amount of glue-like bus compression and broad brush sweetening EQ, this order should work well. So, EQ before or after compression, which is best? You've probably worked out by now, there's no definitive answer here. It's not really about which is best. You should be asking yourself which is right, and that depends on your mixing and how you want that track, mix bus or master to sound. Now, I'm going to level with you. My personal preference is neither approach, and I'm sure this is the same for many of you out there as well. For most things mixing and mastering, my workflow is correction, compression, colour. Being a paragraphic EQ for subtractive surgical cuts and filtering for focusing tone, into compression for reduction, into analog EQ styles for sweetening. I find that this chain covers all of the bases while keeping all of my options open in a mix. The only small drawback is that this chain populates 3 plugin inserts, which can make a session feel a bit cluttered, but a good solution to this for me at least, is Studio Rack, which houses all three of these plugins in one place, and of course can be a preset that I can call up instantly on any track. Anyway, let's keep this conversation going down there in the comments. Where do you put your EQ? Do you put it before your compressors or after? And why? Does it even matter to you? You know, at the end of the day, what it all comes down to is taste and what's good to your ears and what you're comfortable doing when you're working in a mix. But you've also got to remember the why, being why am I EQing pre or post a compressor? If you keep the why in your mind's eye, you'll end up choosing the best method each and every time you work on a mix. But don't forget, EQ and compression are two very different animals, so you should stop thinking of EQ into compressor or vice versa. Instead, you should be asking yourself, do I need to EQ that compressed signal, or do I need to compress that EQ'd signal? Food for thought. Anyway, hope that's helped. As always, thanks for watching. I'm Dan from Waves, and I'll see you in the comments.